In the famous words of Dominic Toretto, it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning. But maybe it's not. Welcome back to the channel. Got an interesting topic that we'll be speaking about today. But first of all, if you're here and you're not subscribed, please do so. Maybe even convince a friend to do the same. And to those of you that are subscribed and that have been sending me messages or sending me, articles to read, things to look at, thank you so much. I'm really appreciating the support. The channel is clearly growing day by day, so that's great. Anyway, today we'll be talking about Z-scores or Z-scores. I don't really care if you say Z or Z, unless we're talking about Dragon Ball, in which case it's always going to be Z. And now before you switch off, because you don't like stats, let me tell you, I'm not a stats guy. I've got my stats guys. I've got Mike Halpin, Alex Tibbetts, Chalking Fitness, and of course, Tyler Watkins, and he's really the man we're going to be speaking about today with regards to the Z-scores. So I'm not going to go deep into this. If you want more information on that, Hiller did a video. The Morning Chalk Up have put out articles, I think written by Tyler himself, this one. Barbend have spoken about it. There's a lot of places you can find out information about how the Z-score or Z-score system actually functions. And if you don't care about that at all, well, I'm going to give you some reasons why it could actually make it more interesting for the spectators of the sport as well. So you may or may not have heard about the Z-score system. In fact, after each semi-final, you may have seen Tyler was posting up the leaderboard and how it would look slightly different using the Z-score format, and that was quite often reposted. So there's a good chance you will have seen it. Now, as I said, I'm not a stats guy, so I asked Tyler to break it down for me in the simplest terms possible as to how exactly this is different from the current scoring system. And he said it takes performance into the equation. And I would even maybe go a step further and say it rewards effort. And I think that's important. So as opposed to the 3 to 5 point difference we get now, so if you're first, you get 100 points. If you come in second, maybe you get 97, 95 points, depending on the scoring system. So it doesn't work quite like that. Now keep this in mind, because this is really important when I'm going to talk about the spectator experience and even the athlete experience a little bit later. But before we get to that, let's talk about Big Orange Brawl. So that's a competition taking place in Knoxville, and they're going to be the first competition, at least to my knowledge, that will be using Z-scoring for the leaderboard. And I reached out to them just to ask why. Why have they made this decision? Because it's quite a big risk to be the first, to be a pioneer in doing something. So I reached out to them, and they got back to me, and they said, "We decided to use Z-scoring as we believe that performance over placement is the best model for CrossFit as a sport, and after spending time talking with Tyler about the scoring system, we felt like our individual division was a good fit to try it out at live competition. We feel this will make for a better competition for the athletes and for the spectators." And they followed it up by saying that they think being the first is always a little scary, as you open yourself up to both positive but also negative backlash, as most people don't like change. But they're going to pull feedback from the athletes and how it goes, and they think that it will make sense for more competitions to jump on board for their events as well. So I'd just like to kind of break down some of the elements of their statement there. So they talked of this performance over placement, and that's what we said the Z-scores really is, and that they feel that this is better competition for both the athletes and the spectators. And this is the point I'd really like to focus on, because I've heard people talk about Z-scores, and they've done that with regards to kind of the accuracy and is it a better test of fitness. But I don't want to look at it from the stats side of thing. I want to focus on the experience of using it. So first, we said the athletes. Well, let's say you and I are going head-to-head in this competition. And maybe in workout 1, I finish first and you finish second, but man, it's a close race. Like, it's a sprint to the finish. I beat you by a matter of milliseconds. And of course, we beat everybody else in the field. That was a given, right? But then we go into event 2. Now, again, we take first and second, but this time you take first and I take second. The difference is you absolutely destroy this workout. I mean, you finish way ahead of me and way ahead of everyone else. Now, in the current scoring system, when we go into event 3, well, we're tied on points. But the Z-score system will have taken into account how dominant your finish was, how far ahead of the pack you finished. So you are being rewarded for how good you are, for the extra effort you're putting in. So that's going to feel pretty good, right, if you're an athlete. But what about as a spectator? Well, two examples immediately jump to my mind. Do you like watching Guinea lift? I think we all enjoy it, right? But how did we feel at the Rogue Invitational when he declined his final lift? But the reason he declined that lift, it was a smart move. He was already in first. There was no benefit to him to do an extra lift using the current scoring format. But if we'd been using Z-scores, he would have increased his lead over second place and he'd have been rewarded for that. And we can look at it at the other end of the scale. We just had strength in depth. Sam Briggs passed on her second 2 lifts, right? So she only did the first lift. Why? Because she knew that she would have to do a massive jump in order to take the person that was ahead of her. And she wasn't going to do it. So she did 1 lift and she bowed out. But using the Z-score system, if she'd done additional lifts and gotten closer to the person ahead of her, even though she'd been in last, that still would have been beneficial for her and more enjoyable for us to watch. And these are obviously just the extremes, first and last, but it would apply across the field. You know, if someone is coming in second and they see the person that's in third is still a little ways off, they're not going to phone it in. They're going to try and get as close to first as they can, put as much distance between themselves and third as they can, because they will be rewarded for that. And we will see finishes where people are fighting for every second, every space, because the time at which they finish or the amount of weight in which they lift, it will really matter. It will be more accurately distributed across the leaderboard. And ultimately, wouldn't that result in a more enjoyable experience for those of us that are just watching it? Because we're going to see people really pushing in every single workout for every single position that they can take. But I'd also like to look at the second statement that Orange Brawl made, because that's really interesting, isn't it? Because they're absolutely right. It is scary. We have a proven scoring system. It's one that is used pretty much everywhere you go with regards to CrossFit. And yet they're happy to be Tyler's guinea pigs and to try out this system. Now, it could all go wrong. It could blow up in their faces. But someone has to be first. And it's not going to be the CrossFit Games. So I think it's really commendable for them to take that first step and then to go out and get feedback from the athletes afterwards, to be willing to share that with other competitions so that others could start to use this scoring system if it works well. Because that could be genuinely the first steps we see in a change in how we score competitive CrossFit. So if you're not following Orange Brawl, I would definitely recommend keeping an eye on them, because this could be something really interesting. Depending on what happens in October, we could start seeing a real shift in the way in which CrossFit is scored. And that could have been the first step, the catalyst. I suppose one final thought I might have, or not necessarily me, but a final thought a person might have is, will it be easy to follow? If there's a whole formula needed to work out how many points people are getting when they cross the line, is it going to be an enjoyable competition to watch? But if we're honest, even now, it's always a best guess, right? Times we know are always unofficial. Then we start trying to work out, well, hold on, in heat 1 or in heat 2, well, how many people finished between this person and that person? We're trying to work it all out. We're trying to do the quick maths. There's appeals, so certain times get slightly adjusted. Basically, what do? We wait for them to put up the leaderboard. It's the only way we're ever really sure. So ultimately, it won't change, will it? We'll keep just waiting for the official leaderboard. And there we have it. This could be the first instance we have of someone putting in place Tyler Watkins' Z-score system. First and last, or the first of many? Only time will tell. So I will definitely be checking back in after the fact and letting you know how it went, and maybe my thoughts on the competition, and hopefully their thoughts if I can speak to them once again. So that would be really great. There's also some other competitions coming up that are doing different things as well, and I definitely plan on talking about that in some future videos. So if you're not subscribed and you don't want to miss out on that, please subscribe to the channel, and as I said, try and bring a friend along as well. It really helps the channel grow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a future video.